In Albion, there are 3 different ways that you can increase the amount of combat fame that you get at the cost of silver. These are Auto-Respec, Satchels of Insight, and Tomes of Insight. Now I often get asked about these and if they're worth using or which one is best, and so in this video I'm going to briefly explain all 3 of them and when you should be looking to use them and if they're worth it. So if you have any weapon or armor at 100, whether that's mastery or specialization, and you gain fame while using that armor, since you can't get any more levels in that armor because it's maxed, a very small proportion of that fame will get given to you as fame credits, which can then be used to increase your level in any of the other armor or weapons. Now at the top of the Destiny board here, you have an option to turn on Auto-Respec, which essentially grants you more of these fame credits when you get fame when you have something at max at the cost of a little bit of silver. Now I started with Auto-Respec because in my opinion it's not only the single best use of silver to accelerate your fame in the game, it's also the single best use of silver period in the game. Now the cost of 1 fame using Auto-Respec like this is around 1.36 silver, which technically is higher than some of the other methods. However, fame credits are just insanely good because they're so unbelievably versatile and quick to use. Just most basically, all of the other fame acceleration methods give you bonus fame for the gear that you're using. However, Auto-Respec can be used on one specific node individually. When you go out to fame farm normally, even if you're using something like a satchel, the fame gets split evenly between up to 10 different nodes if you include specialization and mastery. Fame credits can be used to level 1 node specifically, so essentially it's like fame farming and literally all of the fame going to, say, your weapon, for example, and speccing up your weapon like 10 times as fast. It just allows for such flexibility and freedom in your specialization that its value is unparalleled. My suggestion would be to go and turn it on right now, even if you just started the game, and just forget about it. The only times that you wouldn't want this on is if you really need money, like to pay for premium, which if you're one of those people, you probably don't have anything maxed anyways, or if you're already completely maxed and have no use for fame. Satchels of Insight are an item that goes into your bag slot that you can toggle on and off. When toggled on, every time that you gain combat fame, like you kill a mob, you'll gain some bonus fame at the cost of some silver. So for example, if you kill a mob worth 1000 fame, you might get, say, 250 extra fame, but you might have to pay around 300 silver for it. Depending on your tier of satchel, you have to pay anywhere from 1.23 to 1.30 silver for every extra fame that you get. The higher tier satchel that you get, the more efficient it is for silver to fame. So the highest tier 8.3 masterpiece is 1.23 silver for every fame. Similarly, the amount of bonus fame that you get scales with tiers, so a flat 4 satchel is around 20% bonus fame, whereas an 8.3 masterpiece is around 75% bonus fame. What this means is that you always want to use the highest tier satchel that you can while you're fame farming. So are satchels worth it? Should you be using one? Well, that answer completely depends on your situation. One thing I'll say right off the bat is that if you're planning on buying premium, don't use a satchel until you have premium because it's essentially just inefficient. If you don't play that much and premium isn't worth it for you, then it's fine to use. Otherwise, save up your money for premium and then use it after. Overall though, really, it's best not to overthink it. If you're in need of money, don't use it. If you're not in need of money and you want to fame farm up, use it. Generally speaking though, the amount of money that you get from things like Black Zone solo dungeons or ratting Slayer Corrupted dungeons is more than the amount of fame you get, so even if you are using an 8.3 masterpiece satchel, you'll still usually be able to pay fully for that satchel just based on the amount of money that you get from clearing those dungeons. If you're doing dungeons in like the Yellow Zone or solo and group dungeons, you might not be able to fully pay it off with the loot, but it will still do quite a lot in terms of paying off the satchel, so you won't be losing too much money. Now, one thing to be careful about with the satchel is that once you start reaching max specialization or mastery in your fame farm set, it becomes less and less efficient to use in combination with Auto-Respec, or even more so, even just with the normal respecialization without the Auto-Respec. This is because the respec process only takes a small proportion, around 10 to 40% if you're using respec, and converts it into fame credits, meaning that essentially you're paying for all of the fame you get, but only 10 to 40% of it is actually being converted, meaning the efficiency goes down quite a lot. This doesn't mean that you should never use it while you have some of your fame farm gear at max spec, but just know that you're effectively playing way more than the 1.23 to 1.3 silver per fame that it advertises on the satchel. Really, the sweet spot for Satchels of Insight are right after you buy premium and you're still low spec in your gear. It's best to use that when you have premium and you're not 100 in any of your fame farm gear. That's the perfect time to use a satchel, and I would 100% suggest using it for that duration of time. Tomes of Insight can be bought from the market or gained from mobs or anything like that, and essentially you can just use it and it will give you 10,000 fame to any of the gear that you have equipped. If you're patient, you can buy them for around 25,000 silver, meaning it's around 2.5 silver for every fame. When you compare this to the Satchels of Insight, this may not seem very good at first because it's around twice as expensive for every fame. However, they do have some really good benefits. First and most obviously, it means you don't actually have to go out and fame farm. You can essentially go from 0 to max spec in like an hour just by AFKing in the bank and clicking use all on stacks of insights. So in terms of fame farming speed, it's literally unparalleled. However, the real benefit comes in its ability to spec up items that are really bad for fame farm really easily. For example, if I want to spec up my bedrock mace, going out and doing soul dungeons with it will be very difficult and it will be a very long and painstaking process, not getting me much fame per hour at all. So really, my only two reasonable choices are to use these Tomes of Insight or to use fame credits. So essentially, Tomes of Insight are the best to use when you don't have any fame credits left over and the gear that you're trying to spec isn't very good for fame farming itself. It will be more silver efficient for you to use Tomes of Insight than to go out in your fame farming gear if it's maxed out with a satchel and getting fame credits to spend on that armor. Now, just to note quickly, with Tomes of Insight, they do have the same problem as Satchels of Insight. You have to be a little bit careful if you want to spec up your mage robe, for example, but you already have 100 in cloth robe fighter. It will increase the inefficiency because you won't be getting any fame for that, and that will instead be going into fame credits with a very poor silver to fame ratio. So if you're going to use Tomes of Insight, try to make sure every slot of gear that you're wearing has less than 100 mastery and specialization on it. Okay, too long didn't watch, here's a very quick summary. Auto-Respec is the best use of silver in the game. You should pretty much always have it on unless you desperately need silver. It is amazingly efficient. Satchels of Insight are amazing, very good for fame farming, however they get significantly less efficient once you start hitting 100 mastery and spec on your fame farming gear, so they're best to use after you buy premium and before you max your fame farming gear out. Tomes of Insight are the least silver efficient of the three, but are more efficient than fame farming with a satchel with a max spec gear set. So you want to use Tomes of Insight when you're speccing up gear that is not easy to fame farm with and you don't have any fame credits to spend on it. It's also by far the fastest way to spec up, so if you don't care about money at all, use Tomes of Insight for everything. Okay, that's all for this video. I hope you learned a lot about how to maximize your fame and silver efficiency. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments or in my Discord, which will be linked in the description.